Hi there, Mary Languish here with another FGI art tutorial. Today we'll be learning how to draw a realistic eye. So I'm going to be starting with a B pencil here. And the trick with drawing eyes is to actually start with the whole iris. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to make sure you start out with a perfect circle. A lot of times we don't draw it as a complete circle because we know that the eyelid covers a lot of it, but we want to start with a basic circle, and then our eyelid can always cut off the top or the bottom depending on the picture we're looking at for reference. So once I have the iris in there, then I want to draw the upper eyelid, and this is where you can cut off the top of the iris because the iris in most cases is going to be hidden either top or bottom or both underneath the eyelid. So I want to draw that. Again, you're drawing lightly just so you don't end up with too many dark lines that are harder to erase if you end up messing up or needing to move something. And so I like to start with those two basic lines. I personally do not draw the bottom eyelid at all. Later, when we add shading, I'll add a little value to that to show you kind of how you create the edge of the bottom eyelid. But I think the biggest mistake is then drawing this next line underneath here because it just immediately looks really fakey. So I want you to stay away from that and try drawing and starting with the circle and then the upper eyelid. Now we're going to kind of jump into just outlining a few more things and then jumping into value pretty much right away. So I am going to put in the crease in the upper eyelid here so that I can make sure that that's in the right place. And then I know that the eyebrow is up here with, you know, the right amount of space between eyelid and eyebrow, something like that. I am also going to draw in just the outside of the highlight. It's a really important piece to not leave out because that's what makes your eye look realistic when it's done. And I'm not doing any eyelashes or anything like that now. That's a detail thing. That's like the last step. So I'm just putting in highlight, and then I'm going to also put in the pupil. People often get the pupil and iris mixed up. The iris is the colored part, and the pupil is the dark hole in the center. I'm going to just fix the corner here a little bit so we have a little bit more defined tear duct area, like that. Now we can jump into value right away. So I'm going to switch to a 3B or a slightly darker pencil. And from here, I want to start with the really, really dark parts and shade those first. So I'm going to come in and I like to start with the pupil because that's a good example of something that's really, really, really dark. So I'm going to come in, shade that really solid, as black as you can because this is a baseline for how dark my values are going to be. And then upper eyelid, there's often eyelashes, and in most cases they're going to have either a shadow on them, they're going to be dark, they're going to be covered in mascara, there might be just a bunch of different things happening to make this look really dark. And so I kind of group it as one piece. So I come in and I say, okay, this is just, yes, there's eyelashes here, individual eyelashes, but the whole thing is kind of this dark, thick section. So I'm going to put that in. Now, for this particular eye, it's a blue eye. I think those are a little harder to draw, so that's why I thought I'd instruct that. So the border is a little bit darker too on the iris. So kind of combining from the eyelash section up here, working my way down. It gets a little bit lighter as it comes down this direction. So I want to make sure I account for that. And then around this highlight, it actually is fairly dark. So I want to come in and start to fill that in a little bit here. Because the eyelid, upper eyelid, shades the eyeball on the iris and on the white of the eye, which we'll get to later. Now the crease in the eye is also pretty dark, but it's not just a line. It's going to be kind of a thicker thicker shadow area. The line might be thin in some spots and then a little bit thicker in others, so I want to make sure I'm paying attention to those things, because the crease starts to disappear as it goes this side of the eye as well as this side of the eye. Now, those are pretty much, I guess, besides the eyebrow, that's pretty much all the really, really, really dark values in my picture. Put a little bit of suggestion of that. So now that we have the dark, dark, dark values, we're going to come in and just go to the next layer. So I'm going to fill in, even though it's a blue eye, it still needs to have a little bit of a value. It depends on how blue it is, how light it is, but I want to give this a value. And then when I do that, it determines how much darker my darks need to go, and I can tell that I lost the outside a little bit, so I'm going to shade that in. The corner of the eye over here, I'm noticing there's definitely value around the little fleshy part here with a little highlight in the middle. And then the white of the eye has a little bit of a value on top there. Same with the corner over here. And as it comes this direction, as it meets the bottom eyelid, remember I said we're not going to draw the bottom eyelid across, but when it meets that bottom eyelid, you get a little bit of a shadow that kind of follows where that bottom eyelid is going to go. And so I'm going to really lightly, in this corner, follow that line all the way down. And so now I've created an edge without putting a line there. I can do the same thing on this side a little bit too. There's a little bit of a shadow that kind of creeps around, comes up and then comes down. But in the middle I get a little highlight, and so I want to not connect these lines together. I want to leave them separate. Do a little blending with the finger. Whites of the eyes are never perfectly white. The whitest part in our picture is the highlight, so I need to make sure the white of the eyes actually have a value on them. That's going to really round the eye, make it look realistic. Now I want to do the same thing with skin. Anywhere that's not got a really bright highlight, I want to just put in kind of some more definition for the skin and how it's folding around the eye. I can erase that part of the eyelids, make sure that that stays really bright because it's catching the light. And then this again goes into value again over here. Everyone's eye is shaped differently, so make sure you're paying attention to whatever reference you're referring to when you're drawing an eye. And that value sneaks up into the eyebrow and down to eventually connect with the nose. This in here all has a value because it's not white, so I need to give it something in here. I can blend a little bit with my finger. And then I might need to darken my darks again. It's kind of it's a back and forth dance between adding in your medium values, preserving your lights, darkening your darks when you need to do that. Just making sure you're paying attention to all those little details. That's what makes it look real. Now in here, there's a little bit of a highlight on the skin, and so I want to make sure for that to be prominent, I have to shade around this spot a little bit. And a little bit down in here. Now let's jump to the bottom eyelid. This is where it's going to be magical. So we got that little dark spot in the white of the eye on both corners, but then because our eyelids have a thickness to them, they're skin, right? There's this little ledge, a little shelf that catches light, at least on Caucasian eye here for an example, and then it goes into a little bit of a value just past that. And so I want to show that little ledge, little shelf, by skipping that little spot and then putting a little bit of value just below. And you kind of get a little bit of wrinkles down in here too. It depends on the picture, but that can happen a little bit too. Blending is a good thing to do. There's actually some bright highlights in here that I'm going to use or put in by using my eraser to pull them out. All right, so there is my basic mid values happening. I'm noticing there's a little bit more value here in the corner of the white of the eye. That's really going to help that bring that to life a little bit more. And then same with this corner, could go maybe a little bit darker. All things you have to pay attention to. So now we're kind of at the detail stage. We've got the basic darks in there, the mediums, we've avoided the highlights and the areas that are lighter. And we're gonna go in and just make sure all our darks are dark and add in things like eyelashes, details on the iris, highlights that need to be other places, all that jazz. So I'm gonna come in and start with the reflections in the highlight of the eyelashes, because eyelashes are above and they're highlighting or reflecting into the eye. Boom, there's that. And then the iris has a little bit of detail, like from the pupil going into the iris, you get some of these little lines. And same out here, you get little pockets of dark and you want to kind of put some of those in. Not consistent and not repetitive, just wherever you see them in the picture. Because you don't want to do the classic sun with like all the lines coming from it, because that's not how it looks in real life. And then make sure this is really dark. Eyelashes now, you know, come forward and up, and so you're not seeing a lot of them. So I got a little guy here, a little one here, and we took care of most of it by putting in that thick bar in there for where the lashes go. And then as they go to the side, you're going to see more of them from the side, because the eye is rounded, so if they're coming at you, then as they go around, they're going to go around like this. Starting from where they're supposed to come out of and then transitioning the direction they should go. This way. Down and up, down and up, down and up. You might notice other things that need to be darkened. You can jump into that as well as you go. And then maybe this corner of the eye a little bit more. So you can see that shelf a little bit clearer. Bottom eyelashes, same thing, but they come from the edge of that little shelf. And they're going to come out. And they overlap. They're irregular. Notice how I'm starting at the root and pulling out kind of sharply from there. They clump together a little bit. They overlap, so you want to make sure they look irregular. All right, now we want to define a little bit more in here. There's some more darks in the corner of the eye. A little bit more of a line there. Make sure these wrinkles are defined. Up in here, it's not quite so bright, so I'm going to dull that down. Eyelash, or eyebrow, I mean, is darker. Now I'm just going to switch to an H pencil. And we're going to just blend things a little bit more. An H pencil just puts kind of a nice value over most things. I'm not going to put it over bright highlights, but it just blends things a little bit, gives it a unity. We call it glazing. Make sure this highlight is strong behind the lashes there. I'm putting it most places because I'm going to come in and erase those really bright highlights once we put this down. So it gives it a unity. You don't want to overdo it. Now with my eraser, I'm just going to come in, make sure that highlight on the eye is actually really light. And then wherever you need to take out a little bit more brightness, you can. There's a little highlight kind of back in here. There's a distinct highlight on this bottom edge here, which creates kind of the finish touch on the bottom eyelid. There's distinct highlights in the corner here to make sure that those look wet. And then making sure that this little spot is nice and bright. A little bit of another highlight right there. Defining right underneath the shelf. So you can see that little highlight there. And then over in here as well. And there you have a realistic eye just done with pencil. So if you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more art content like this. And I thank you for watching, and until next time, bye!